now it's time. Could I invite Professor Edward and Deo to join up front? And we've got time for some questions from the audience. I'm sure there'll be plenty of them. And then after the questions, we have a small morning tea break and then some afternoon presentations. So I would like to open it up to the floor. Does anyone have any questions for any of our speakers?
I learned from you about involving communities. So, for example, they have access to conditions of heat vulnerability or heat risk, and could inform them what they can do, the actions to survive during heat waves. I think that's really a great idea, great strategies. My question, how do you find out the participation from citizens?
Participation?
Yes, so involvement. So from the presentation you gave this morning, I appreciate that because that's very important in through that project, how that has been implemented.
Well, the easiest way is to work with the NGOs and the social workers who are already working with these people. So let them that there are problems beyond what they are already known problems, like kind of health and accessibility problem and things like that. So we start working with these people first. And one of the NGOs that we work with are called the Safe Alarm, whatever organization. Basically, they send the alarm to the elderly. So if they have a problem, they press it, and the social worker will go there to help them. But it's a very passive way. We told them very passive way of solving problem. So nowadays, when the signal is given by the meteorological services, they will call them before they even press the button, or the button will do something to tell the participants that they need to do something. So these are some of the changes. But we work with, for example, Red Cross. They have a huge program on how to educate the social workers what to do. They even give them guidelines and protocol that they need to follow if A is broadcast or B is announced. So these are some of the things that we hope can mitigate or adapt the population to the problem that we all identify. Not too long ago, actually a few days before I arrived. Actually, I don't know whether or not I can go back to Hong Kong anymore. We told the government that they are idiots. Well, basically, you know, 2 weeks ago or something like that. Some weeks ago, Hong Kong has the worst rainstorm in history, in Hong Kong's very short history. And the politician came out and said, well, this is the once in 500-year event. We should not worry too much about it. Of course, we will do something about it. It means that it doesn't bother him because it only happens long after he's dead. So 1 in 500 events, so-called. We actually had the simulation of the future data. We told them that actually it will come back next year. And therefore he's wrong. So it's a once a year event, and also that the signal that we had last time was 150 millimeter per hour of rain, 150 millimeter per hour of rain coming down, and some of the metro station was flooded, and a lot of homes were affected. We told them next one that is coming will be 230, and the next one will be 300. So don't tell me it's a 1 in 500 event, because it will happen 3 times before you are re-elected or before you are re-elected. So I don't know if that helps out, but that signal has been sent to the general public that precautions is extremely important, and heat event will increase tremendously in Hong Kong. We estimate that, for example, that the heat event in the past will be 5 times in 10 years, but it will be about 20 times in 1 year. and therefore you really have to prepare yourself instead of wait until it comes and find out what to do. You have to prepare yourself. So these are some of the things that we're working with the communities, the press, and sometimes the politician. Sometimes our politicians, like your politicians, no, I should not say that. Our politicians are the worst.
Just adding to that, can I just throw in this whole business of 100-year flood or 100-year events or 1,000-year events? I think someone should look at the methodology at the time, long time ago when they calculated this. Because in Western Sydney, far west, I know areas which are a lot of people buy land because it's 100-year flood. It's every year they get flooded out and the house walls close to the roof flooding. I think there's a fundamental error in the methodology there somewhere.
And the same happens all around the world. You know, in Europe, especially in Greece, you know, last year we had tremendous floods, tremendous. And many colleagues, you know, very respected colleagues, they came the same way like Hong Kong. This happens every 3,000 years or every 450 years. This year we had exactly the same, it was worse. So unfortunately, we have not understood well let's say, the characteristics of climate change. We don't have the experience. We learn now. And we make mistakes. But the worst is not that. The worst is that we have many colleagues that they are really very happy to provide whatever, you know, the governments they want, give advice or whatever they want, and really they delay the whole process. And this is a serious problem. I think that the scientific community should be serious and should give the proper, let's say, characteristics and the proper advice.
Thank you.
I actually told the government not too long ago, I said you should not plan the future using your past experience. And you should never do that for climate, because the climate is kind of changing very slowly. You can use the past to predict the future, but now you can't. So I keep on telling them that you should not use the past to guide your future. It's the wrong thing to do, because it will change. And something unexpected will happen. So therefore, for us scientists, we need to provide them with what the future looks like, and as accurate as possible a prediction all the way until 2100. So then we now can calculate the number of episodes that may happen in the next 50 years. And then tell them that, yes, in the past, it happens once every 10 years, but in the future, it happens 10 times per year. So that will be the episode. So using that data set, well put together, acknowledged and endorsed by the meteorological services, has to be done that way. Because if they don't endorse it, you're using the data, they call it, and the government wouldn't listen to you. And this is the reason why I say that document by the World Meteorological Office is extremely important, because now the way that we do things are acknowledged by them as official. So the government cannot ignore you, because it's not an official, it's not pollution. So you can use that data set to calculate the event that may happen in the next 30 years, and then tell the public how to react to that. I'm sure you have that data set in Australia already. Yeah. If not, then we can do it for you for small fee.
Thanks all for great presentation. And just I have a question from Professor Santa Maria regarding awareness of the people. How awareness of people impact on energy consumption, especially in some areas like Alsace Springs.
Can you repeat your question?
How awareness of people about the overheating and basic of the climate change impact on energy consumption. especially in some areas like
You mean the global climate change, not the local climate change. The energy consumption, for example, of a typical reference building in 1980, and today, in average, has increased, to about 35%. 35%, not taking into account any, let's say, regional problem, urbanization itself. And this means that we have an increase of the cooling energy consumption in average. It depends on the one area to the other. By, let's say, about, 50-60%, cooling energy consumption, the decrease of the heating energy consumption by 10%. So the energy consumption is increasing because, of the higher, let's say, temperatures around the world. But, this is not the same everywhere. There are areas with a tremendous impact, and there are areas with much lower impact regarding the global climate change. Given that actually, more than 65% all around the world and 85% in the developed countries live in cities. The main problem is the energy consumption of cities. This urban population by 2030 will be close to 6.57 billion people. Given that the energy consumption of cities is increasing tremendously all around the world, especially in the developing countries. In this case, really, the problem of energy provision, is more an urban problem. At the same time, of course, it's a problem, in global and in rural areas. And because of the, let's say, the policies that have been followed in the different countries during the very last years, this problem, it's aggravated. For example, in China, in let's say 2000, the penetration of air conditioners in rural areas was 2%. Now it's 75%. And the penetration of, let's say, air conditioners in urban areas of China was about, let's say, 35%. Now it's 98%. Everyone has an air conditioner. Having an air conditioner and putting the emphasis on, let's say, the use of air conditioning instead of improving the buildings and provide, higher quality buildings. This means that we need more energy. And this means that you need more peak power demand. This means that you need to have more power plants that operate just for a few days per year. And this increases tremendously the cost of electricity. And they need grids, and all these kind of things. So this is the real problem. And of course, I will not really want to discuss about the provision of energy. Because this is the major problem. What kind of energy are we going to use? Are we going to use just renewables? But renewables without storage means that we cannot really cover more than 70-80%. You need to have storage for the rest. But unfortunately now, because of the very high cost of storage, the companies, they install, renewable energy sources everywhere, but they don't install storage, which means that you need to have a backup. And the backup may be, let's say, gas or coal or oil. So in this case, you need to have two systems that work together. The renewable energy system and the conventional one for backup. And this increases tremendously, let's say, the cost of electricity and the cost of energy. On the other hand, the actual policy that was designed by the International Energy Agency, etc., for the decarbonization was based on electrification. Heat pumps everywhere. A very good system, of course. But to operate, the energy system of the world by using electricity sources needs a huge transformation of the financial system, not only of the technological system, of the financial system. Why? Because we have, a shift of the power and of the income from a certain group to another group. We have a group, we used to have a group that controls the production of electricity, and now we move to another group. Sometimes it is the same group, but it's not the case always. This new group has put completely new rules. And although for many years we expected that the use of renewables would decrease the cost and make electricity more affordable, this is not the case. The cost is increasing. And this means, that we need to have a transformation of the financial system that really controls the marketing and the market of electricity. For the time being, in developed countries, this transformation is very negative. It increases the cost. It creates problems. So, a part of the technological problems that, of course, we discuss, we have to face the problem of the financial transformation. If we don't do that, if we don't really develop tools for the financial sector, the private sector, the state sector, and at the same time, if we don't really try the investments that we need to have, for example, for decarbonization of the built environment, we have to spend 1.6 trillion American dollars per year from now on to 2050. These investments should have an added value for a country. For example, in Europe, we have to spend 265 billion per year for the decarbonization of the built environment. The European Union is giving no more than 40%. The rest has to come from, let's say, the financial sector, the private sector, etc. But the tools that this money can be, let's say, invested in the market do not exist. So this is another problem. And the most important is that once we spend 265 billion per year, which is a added value for the country, if this money, if this budget is sent to another country to buy technology, decarbonization means for Europe that neglected, for example, the technological development for many years, for example, photovoltaics. Photovoltaics are producing in your own country, actually, 98%. From the 265 billions actually for the decarbonization, 120 billions per year have to be sent to one country by technology.
Our country.
Which means, so decarbonization is a huge, really opportunity growth that once it is well designed from the financial point of view, in order to be able to provide added value. If this is forgotten, decarbonization may result in negative, let's say, findings.
Yes, just a related issue to that. At the moment, the building code for modeling energy performance, for example, of buildings in Australia, the data sets being used are about 10 to 20 years old, depending on which data set you are using. So we already using, say, 20-year-old data sets to predict energy consumption in large buildings. And the climate has changed in the meantime. So there is error in that. But then when you're beginning to look at the life of the building next 50 years, because you're setting in a design, you're optimizing using old data, it is going to be even worse in the future. So the weather data, we have been getting the building code of Australia alerted to this, and the neighbours, which is the other assessment tool in Australia, aware of that. They know about it, but nobody is trying to actually act on it. And yet we're building so many buildings already with 20-year-old data sets, which are out of date today, basically. Forget about next 50 years.
But one of this is exactly the problem. I mean, the industry is very happy using those old data sets because they can continue to get their platinum, whatever, gold, and all this funny award that they are still getting. because if you use the future data set, all the buildings are rubbish and very rubbish and too rubbish. So so this is the problem. Planning tomorrow with yesterday's knowledge is in today's changing world something that we must forget. Cannot continue to do that.
Question.
Yeah, I just have a quick question for Matt. This is related to the radiative cooling, the coating that you talk about it. I don't know you can put that on the roof to keep the surface temperature lower than the ambient. And I read an article recently, I think they talk about it in Western Sydney. They actually apply that to the road or street. It's a kind of they call it cool coating or cool paint on the road. Now, when you apply this company on the roof or on the road, eventually it will be covered by dust. I wonder how much the performance will degrade when they are covered by dust.
First, I have to tell you that this is not something new. This is something that we know 25 years ago. Also to tell you that actually in Los Angeles, there are 1 million square meters of cool pavements. 1 million square meters, not some square meters. Thank you. Similar projects exist also in Texas, Florida, in New Mexico, etc. So all the South American cities, they use cool pavements. The expected, let's say, results, conventional materials, like the ones that we're using here, not the photonic materials, may decrease the peak temperature of cities up to 1.5 degrees. This is the maximum you may have. But the solution really to use cool pavements and cool roofs is very important, but has really to fit with the real problems in the city and the real sources of the problem in the city. What I mean, the reasons of the overheating in a place are not always the same. Why, let's say, Western Sydney is overheated? Because it has high density, because it lacks greenery, because it has something very specific. The reason that Western Sydney really is overheated is because of the proximity to the desert. And why in, let's say, the eastern part of the city, we have the sea breeze that cools down, the city up to the eastern part of Parramatta. In the western part, we have the advection of heat from the desert, to the western city. So this is a problem that cannot be solved by planting trees or having wood pavements, etc. To solve this problem and decrease the strength of the advection of heat from the desert to Western Sydney, you need really to decrease the, let's say, planetary boundary layer. To decrease the planetary boundary layer, you have to decrease the surface temperature of the city. That's the only way to do it. But even we know that the strength of the phenomenon because of the global climatic change is increasing, actually we need to have more innovative and more sophisticated techniques, especially for Western Sydney. In my opinion, and according to all predictions, for Western Sydney, performed by CSIRO, UNSW, all the universities, shows that by 2050, there will be more than 50 days per year above 50. So this is something that really has to be taken into account. And this means that all the possible means and technologies have to be used there in order to decrease the temperature. But I'm afraid that if the strength of the global climatic change, and especially the increase of the temperature of the water in the, let's say, in the equator is increasing, which creates more strength Rossby waves above Australia, the strength of the advection will increase. So I'm afraid that all these areas which are close to the desert or are influenced by the desert will be abandoned by 2050. Will be impossible to live there. Temperature will be above 50 degrees.
Thank you.
If we just one last question and then we'll break for morning meetings.
Professors, thank you so much for your informative presentations. Now
Professor.
all the professors. Yeah. So, based on the current IPCC report, we can know that the climate change in the long term have a very severe impact on the economy sector through the productivity. But I found that there is only a limited research now about the economy, the economy, about the urban heat impact on the economy on the local areas in short terms. So my question is this impact, is it because the impact is limited, or do you have any comments about the urban heat impact on the economy? Thank you so much.
A lot of data. This is a very interesting and very important question. Thank you. There are a lot of data about the economic impact, of overheating in cities. This is very well documented in American cities. We know very well. And the cost is tremendous. The cost is tremendous. It's very high. Just because, of the, let's say, loss of productive hours, in the United States, they are losing 0.25 of their GDP, and this is here very high. Forecast shows that by 2050, some countries may lose up to 25% of their GDP because of the studies also in Australia shows that, the phenomenon that has the highest economic impact is climatic change by far. So there are a lot of economic studies, enough economic studies. And there are a lot of sectoral studies about health, the energy, about productivity, about everything. So we know this is very well documented. And I'm afraid that the politicians, they know. But don't ask me why we don't have the proper policies. But it is a very well documented, let's say, topic. During the last 10 to 15 years, there is a lot of work that has been done. We know really what is happening. We know that the cost really of reactive actions is 10 times higher than the cost of the proactive actions. But unfortunately, we work more on the reactive side than on the proactive side.
Actually, there are also data, especially on the health cost of these events. A lot of data, but then the health service at the moment concentrate on cure-related kind of expenses. They spend a fair chunk of money on trying to treat you when you're sick, but then very, very little money on public health issues of preventing that from happening. And the heat-related problem is prevention more than curing. Because by the time you get to the hospital, they say you die of heart disease, but what causes it, they don't want to know. So you are there for a heart disease problem, not a heat stress problem. But the data that you mentioned are there. It's just that people at the moment, because of their past practice, doesn't want to know. Yeah, especially politicians, they don't want to know because it's a big can of worms there. If they open it, they're all gone, which is good.
Yeah, just a little bit to add. I think there is a issue about the line of sight. So because of these, what other effects are happening that are really bad for the economy? Pakistan had floods last year, and it cost about $25 billion from the World Bank to deal with fixing up the problems, for example. So we have just dealt with it in the first place. It would have been so much cheaper. Just as a small case study, there are certain things that are very directly relatable, saying, okay, this happened immediately because of this. Governments and politicians in particular try and hide behind the distance theory, if you like. If it's too far removed, they don't try and think about it. It's somebody else's problem. Lismore up north in New South Wales had a huge flood. Lot of commentators and are talking about that being directly related. It's one of those 1,000-year flood situations, and they think, oh, you know, it's climate change related. They're moving the entire town now to a hill, much further back from where it was near the river. I mean, if you go to looking at those types of costs associated, we're already experiencing that. It's not in the future and all of that. So there are certain things like health, for example, that often mortality, morbidity type data, so much data exists that relates to it, but still politicians somehow hide behind that.
Okay. Could you all please join me? And thank the Professor Edward, Professor Matt, and Professor Deo for their presentations this morning. So we're now going to have a short 10-minute break. Morning tea here is just provided, and then we'll reconvene about 12:05 for the afternoon.